it seems most people are agreed there are different rules for men. I mean, that seems to be the message from the reaction to Brigitte Macron whacking her husband, the French president, in the face after they landed in Vietnam on Sunday. And it was a real whack after what President Macron admitted was a squabble. But really all we've heard since is more or less just a c'est la vie. Of course, everyone I've seen makes the same obvious point. What if the roles were reversed? If it was Emmanuel Macron hitting his wife in the face, his career would be over, and it would. But her hitting him, oh, let's just move on. I don't know. Maybe that's how it should be. I don't know. I mean, it's terrible that a woman hits her husband, but that's about a lack of respect, I guess. And basically, it's a question of, well, the poor bugger married to that. But it's not the same as our disgust, I think, for a man hitting a woman. And they are double standards, I know that, but fair enough. Joining me are two communications consultants, Gemma Tonini, a Sky News regular, and Chrissy McSweeney, who's worked for coalition prime ministers and premiers. Gemma, a man hits his wife, the world wants his head. A woman hits her husband, and the world just says, poor bloke. I mean, double standards or, you know, just the difference between men and women?
Well, of course, it's a double standard, Andrew. I mean, that goes without saying. I think it's concurrently complex, but also really, really simple. And the complexity is around the fact that we know, statistically at least, that the vast majority of domestic violence victims are women, although there is some conjecture about the fact that male victims don't report as often. And there's something, I think, that's just innate in human nature that acknowledges a woman is physically less strong than a man. She is physically more vulnerable in a contest of any kind between a man and a woman. A woman is obviously more vulnerable and weaker, and there is something absolutely abhorrent about a man who raises his fist or any other weapon to a woman. It's disgusting. It happens. It should never happen. What we saw on the plane and that footage that you're talking about was equally as confronting for a myriad different reasons. But what really bothered me was two things. The French government's response, which is like, oh, it's just a moment of love between two consenting adults. Wrong, you're liars. Second of all, the response to the column that I wrote for The Australian, many people were like, oh, you know, I have never raised my hand to a partner in my life, not even in a moment of Italian crankiness, Andrew. I've never, ever done that. And the idea that some people could dismiss it as just like, oh, it's just a woman having a slap, that's disgusting to me.
Chrissy, what do you make of it? I mean, maybe, yeah, I think Gemma's point is right. Men are stronger and perhaps more aggressive on the whole, I guess. And maybe we need more civilising rules about, you know, raising hands against anyone. What do you think? Is that double standard actually then quite natural?
Well, it's a double standard in the response of the French government and a response of many people within the wider French community in senior positions. Again, if this was a man hitting a woman, they wouldn't be able to get away with that response. It's sort of half, oh, we're French, you know, we're passionate and this is how we behave, and then it's sort of, it was a lover's tip and then we were joking around. That's not acceptable at that level of government. That's not an acceptable response on the eve of that global occasion that they were at. That's not an acceptable response for something that you did in front of the world's press. It's just not acceptable. We would never be able to get away with that here in Australia or in the United States. So because it's France, there's this very different cultural bent towards it, I think. Look, I think they have a extremely unorthodox relationship, to put it diplomatically. In any case, you could say there's a, you know, you could say there's a significant power imbalance because he's the president, but you know, we all know that the president's wife is a very, very powerful position in world leaders anyway. So I don't think that's going to hold. But certainly just a response, I think, of the French society and the French government to the rest of the world astounded me. I was shocked when I watched that footage.
Yeah, well, I hadn't heard it until Gemma mentioned it, the French government's response. That's just extraordinary. Yeah, must be a lot of unhappy relationships in France. No, wow.
Very culturally isolated to France, I think.
Yeah. I don't even know. I don't think Italy, they're a very emotional country by reputation. I don't know that they'd get away with it even in Italy, let alone. But
Not
France,
in
my goodness
not
me.
in a million years, Andrew. Not in a million years. Not in a million years. No.
Well, I've watched all the Godfather movies, and I'm trying to think, did anyone slap their husband? I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Oh, there was a lot of violence in those films, Andrew. Thank God they were fictional.
Yes, but there's a line to be crossed. I mean, really, for a Godfather.